Welcome to you all. We are going to start our session now on resilience and resilient cities. Now, I'm going to give a short introduction. I'm going to thank everyone for being here, of course, first of all, and allow our friend Vinesh, his colleague, he's going to take over and give the floor to the various speakers. Unfortunately, we have lost a few people along the way. Some people missed their flights. Others are on their way. People keep arriving, but we do need to get going. We need to get things started, and they can join as they come along. So Abdelmalik Fatimatou is my name. I am the former mayor of a municipality in Mauritania for 17 years, from 2001 to 2018. And since November 2018, I have been the president of the Nouakchott area. That's the capital of Mauritania. Now, I was a champion of resilience through a project that I carried out over 17 years in my municipality, and which gained me the title of a resilience champion in 2012 in Geneva. The UNSDA bestowed that honor upon me. The UN honored me with that. Now, we, I think, are all in agreement that rapid urbanization increases risks. I think we also agree that world agendas, including on climate change, are also increasing risks, and the frequency and the intensity of disasters and catastrophes affecting cities. However, we also agree on the fact that there's a very important process. Resilient cities from Go right through Sendai, following a whole series of processes. I don't know whether we're going to be able to debate that, but I think some people in this room are already very familiar with this process. It's very important for cities and for governments, for national governments, because there are platforms here and there for local governments too. There's a very good opportunity for local governments. Once again, they are the first level of response. Problems arise and arrive on the desks of local government representatives before anybody else. So we are in the right place to deal with those. They can be fully aware of the challenges facing the territorial area. They know how to raise the awareness of their local populations and how to get them to change behaviors. And it's very often said that they are the best place than anybody else to be able to apprehend any problems and issues arising through these natural catastrophes and to help build resilient cities. Policies on a local level very often point towards strengthening resilience, both at population level, but also resilience of the various infrastructures of our various cities. So I don't want to touch on too many points at this stage. We have a short 8-minute video which we put together when I was the mayor of the city of which I was the champion. And you will come with me on this video to share with us everything that we did in our municipality and show you the whole process. Because the campaign was called My City's Getting Ready. At that time, cities were invited to join this process, to help to respect and to fill in what we call the 10 essential points, what we call the Bible of cities, to satisfy these 10 points, to bring about and to achieve resilient cities. So let's see that video.
Tavrazena est l'une des 9 communes de Nouakchott, la capitale administrative et politique de la République islamique de Mauritanie. C'est une jeune cité moderne et paisible où vivent près de 60 000 habitants. Son conseil municipal, une équipe dynamique et entreprenante, est dirigé par une jeune femme, Madame Fatimetou Mentad el-Malik, le maire de Tavrazena.
Ma commune, la commune de Tavrazena, est l'une des 9 communes de Nouakchott. Elle abrite sur son territoire les sièges des pouvoirs législatifs et exécutifs, la Chambre basse du Parlement, la Présidence de la République, les missions diplomatiques, les organisations internationales. Elle concentre aussi les principales infrastructures socio-économiques, le marché de la capitale, le premier hôpital construit en Mauritanie, un complexe universitaire en cours de construction, un aéroport international en cours de construction. Elle a un tissu social fortement contrasté avec des riches, voyez les belles villas, à côté des pauvres, ce qui demande à l'élite que nous sommes, l'élite locale que nous sommes, un effort surnaturel pour concilier entre ces deux segments de population aux besoins et aux préoccupations souvent antagonistes. Je l'appelle souvent d'ailleurs capitale de la capitale.
Sous l'impulsion de son maire, Tavrazena a reçu en quelques années de labeur intense et de persévérance à étendre à tous les quartiers les services sociaux de base, santé, éducation, accès à l'eau potable et à l'électricité, approvisionnement des marchés, etc. La commune s'est employée par ailleurs à améliorer le cadre et la qualité de la vie des populations à travers l'aménagement d'espaces verts, de lieux de détente et de loisirs, la réorganisation du système d'enlèvement des ordures, la plantation de palmiers en bordure de certaines grandes artères et la remise en état de fonctionnement du réseau d'évacuation des eaux usées. Un projet d'extension de ces derniers est d'ailleurs en bonne voie. Ce souci du bien-être des populations est d'ailleurs à l'origine de l'adhésion officielle de la commune de Tavrazena à la campagne pour la prévention des catastrophes.
La stratégie internationale des Nations Unies pour la réduction des risques de catastrophes, UNISDR, a lancé depuis quelques temps la campagne internationale pour la résilience des villes, c'est-à-dire renforcer davantage les compétences des villes et des collectivités locales pour bien réduire les effets néfastes des risques et des catastrophes sur les vies humaines, sur les biens économiques et en général sur l'environnement. La commune de Tavrazena, Nouakchott, Mauritanie, n'a pas tardé à adhérer dans ce programme. Je profite de cette occasion de lancer un appel solennel à toutes les communes, à tous les maires de ville, de bien adhérer tout de suite à ce programme très important, très pertinent, qui est lancé par la stratégie internationale, afin de pouvoir renforcer davantage les compétences de leur ville pour bien diminuer les risques liés aux catastrophes.
Loin d'être le fruit du hasard, l'adhésion de Tavrazena à la campagne pour la prévention des catastrophes pour des villes résilientes relève du souci de la commune de prémunir ses citoyens contre des risques de catastrophes, hélas prévisibles, dans son territoire.
Il y a un problème qui est là, c'est le réchauffement climatique. Ce qui va engendrer des fontes de glaciers, et la fonte de glaciers va provoquer un élèvement du niveau de la mer. Cet élèvement du niveau de la mer, bien sûr, a des conséquences, surtout sur des terres qui sont basses. Parmi ces terres, malheureusement, il y a notre capitale, Nouakchott. Qu'est-ce que ça veut dire, les terres basses? Les terres basses sont des terres qui ont en dessous du niveau de la mer ou sur le niveau de la mer. Et ce qui fait que nous devons préserver le cordon littoral qui nous séparent de cet océan.
Fortement exposé, le territoire de Tevrazena possède une façade maritime sableuse et fragile, longue de 40 km. Elle domine des quartiers résidentiels construits sur des terrains inondables qui se transforment en période d'hivernage en véritables mares aux eaux nauséabondes, source de nuisances et de nombreuses maladies infectieuses. Le cordon dunaire du littoral, fragilisé au cours des dernières décennies par la disparition du couvert végétal et la surexploitation, présente des signes qui ne trompent pas.
Nous avons compté environ 18 brèches, dont la plus importante est située entre le port autonome de Nouakchott et le marché de poissons, sur une longueur environ de 400 mètres. Il y a une autre brèche qui est située au nord de l'hôtel de vacances et bien entendu toute la partie sud du port de Nouakchott qui est également exposée et où le cordon dunaire est totalement dénudé. À cette occasion, le port de Nouakchott a construit une digue de protection sur une longueur de 5 km et ils sont actuellement en train de la prolonger jusqu'à environ 15 km. Et face à ce défi, le ministère délégué auprès du Premier ministre de l'Environnement et de développement durable a pris un certain nombre de mesures, dont certaines sont des mesures d'urgence et d'autres seront des mesures qui seront exécutées à long terme ou à moyen terme. Parmi les mesures d'urgence, c'est d'abord le colmatage des brèches et l'endiguement. Ce colmatage des brèches va s'exécuter à partir, Inch'Allah, du mois de mai, grâce au soutien de la coopération allemande, la GIZ, mais également d'un projet qui sera financé par la KfW à partir de janvier 2013.
Dans sa volonté de réussir son pari, Tevrazena a réalisé des activités dignes d'intérêt. La réalisation d'opérations de reboisement du littoral, l'organisation d'investissements humains ayant abouti à l'enlèvement des ordures et des déchets qui jonchent les plages, l'animation de campagnes de sensibilisation des citoyens sur la prévention des catastrophes et l'organisation d'un plaidoyer en ce sens auprès des partenaires du développement.
Le conseil municipal de Tevrazena a très tôt pris conscience du danger qui menace notre ville et égard aux faiblesses qui la rendent vulnérable devant les catastrophes, notamment l'absence du couvert végétal, la construction et le lotissement sur des zones inondables, mais surtout l'absence d'un réseau d'assainissement au niveau de la ville et l'avancée très perceptible de la désertification. Donc on a pris conscience très tôt de ces deux dangers qui convergent pour notre ville, la désertification d'une part et la mer de l'autre part. Donc c'est ça qui a fait que moi j'ai signé très tôt l'engagement en mai 2011 dans le cadre de la campagne de réduction des catastrophes. Nous menons ensemble, avec un rythme soutenu, un certain nombre d'activités en termes de sensibilisation qui s'adressent aux chercheurs, aux décideurs, à la société civile, aux jeunes, aux comités de quartier, aux écoliers, au large public, pour qu'ensemble ils s'embarquent avec nous dans cette campagne pour qu'on puisse réaliser au maximum les 10 essentiels dans le cadre de cette campagne. Je profite de l'occasion pour lancer un appel à mes collègues des autres villes pour qu'ils rejoignent la campagne pour rendre nos villes plus résilientes devant les catastrophes.
Avec l'affectation de ressources à la prévention des catastrophes, la mise en place d'un système de surveillance des brèches constatées au niveau du littoral, l'implication des populations et des décideurs dans le processus de prévention des catastrophes et l'évaluation permanente de la sécurité à tous les niveaux, Tevrazena est un point essentiel pour rendre une ville.
So there we are. Except they said right at the end that in the local language it said cities are always beautiful, must always be beautiful. So some of the things that have been said that were intentions there have already come to pass. This video was made back in 2012. The airport's already been built, the complex has been built. But despite the fact that we wanted to get rid of the shanty towns, they're still there. So I'd like to give the floor. The floor is yours now. Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone.
Are you here? All right, great. So a big round of applause to the Honorable Madame Fatimatu, please, for her initiative. And like she highlighted, she is the champion of resilience. Now, the question about resilience and sustainability, most of the time we are lost in translation. Many people do not really understand what resilience means or what sustainability means. So maybe this panel will help to enlighten us on those terms. And literally, we are talking about resilience and how it is important in our today's city transformation or territorial transformation around the world, and more specifically, I would say, with regards to Africa. We've just seen an example here in Mauritania. But before proceeding, I would like to introduce the panelists today. So once again, we have Honorable Fatimatu. So she's a Mauritanian politician. And I have on my right Craig Laut. He is from the UN Habitat and looking after the coordination, outreach and partnership for urban resilience programs. We also have Dr. René Peter Hormann. So he's German and he is from the United Nations Office for Project Services or City Alliances to be more specific. And I will invite him to elaborate more on what he actually do later on. And on my extreme left, I have architect Mtumbu. He is actually the deputy president of the South African Institute of Architects for KwaZulu-Natal, and he is also the chairperson for Green Building Directorate under the African Union of Architects. And regarding myself, so I'm the Secretary General of the Africa Union of Architects, by the way. So without delaying any further, I'll directly invite Craig, who is on my immediate right, to talk about the challenges that we are currently facing when it comes to housing across the world, and what about the challenges in Africa, in developing nations, in developing cities? So, Craig, the floor is yours.
Okay, so I will. Okay. Firstly, I must apologize for those of you who had the detailed program. It was Esteban Leon, who's the head of UN Habitat's Urban Resilience Program, who was scheduled to speak here. Unfortunately, he was called to the head office for a meeting, so he sent me here to substitute. And as Vanish said, I'm working more on the advocacy, outreach and partnerships aspect of our program. So my presentation is going to be a little bit different, introducing some of the key concepts that we work with, and then really drawing on the lessons that we've learned working with different cities. Because I think one thing that we should try to take out of this session is what are the challenges that local governments are facing when it comes to building resilience, addressing risk, and what do we know works. So I will try to focus a little bit more on that than the specific kind of housing shelter aspect that is Esteban's area of expertise. So Vanish just briefly mentioned definitions, and actually that's where I wanted to start. What you can see there is UN Habitat's working definition of urban resilience. I don't want to read it out. I just want to highlight some of the words that I think are in bold because they're really central to the work that we do, especially at the local level on urban resilience. So the first one there is measurable. As the old saying goes, if you can't measure it, then you can't fix it. So this is important for us. Without being able to measure or at least understand how you can measure resilience in a city, it's very difficult to define actions and track improvements. The second one is inhabitants. So our approach to urban resilience is always people-centered. It's about reducing the impact on people of risks and hazards, be they natural or man-made. And then finally, I think shocks and stresses you have there. This comes back a little bit to this issue of definitions and what is resilience. A clear distinction that we make is that you can do something about the stresses in your city easily, relatively speaking, but it's difficult to do something about the shocks. They will happen regardless. And the reason we make that distinction is because we try to focus on the stresses that underline or that can create more vulnerability in your city. So by reducing or addressing the stresses in the city, the impact of the shocks should also be reduced. And I'll explain a little bit more about that when I go through the kind of methodology that we use. So our work as a program within UN Habitat on urban resilience actually covers 3 areas. As I said, I'm working in the advocacy and outreach area, and actually the campaign, the video that we just saw, the Making Cities Resilient campaign, I think now has gathered 4,500 signatory cities. So we know that local government cities are committed to the resilience agenda. But there's something stopping that turning to real action. Unfortunately, champions like we have on the panel are rare. So what we're doing is trying to address those challenges. So we're working on the advocacy side as well, and then knowledge. So the lessons that we learn, we try to package them in knowledge products that are easy to digest, that can be used in all cities regardless of their size, their capacity. But what I want to focus on now is really the technical cooperation with cities. I think that's the most interesting aspect of our work for this event, certainly. So the City Resilience Profiling Tool, this is the main methodology that our program is using to work with local governments. And this was originally conceived back in 2013, and I would say it came from a more academic background perspective, and the idea was to create an index, a resilience index that could be applied to all cities. Needless to say, that has changed quite a lot. The first kind of feedback that we got from cities who were piloting this indexing was that they did not want to be compared. They did not want to be scored. They did not want to be rated 5 when their neighboring city was rated 7. And the reason behind that was they felt that it's unfair. A city that faces multiple risks or shocks would implicitly get a lower score than a city that faces fewer, even though they may be more active on the resilience agenda. So we listened to that advice, and we moved away from the indexing. So this has become one of the kind of defining features of the City Resilience Profiling Tool. And I just want to cover the ones that you can see on the screen. So no comparisons, I've mentioned that. No indexing at all. We've moved towards city profiles. And it may just seem like replacing one word with another, but actually everyone has a unique profile. Every profile will be unique by definition. There are certain components of that profile that you can compare, you can contrast, but it does not allow you to make an overall comparison between one city and another. And the final one, no plans. I think resilience has become a very trending topic, and developing resilience action plans was kind of mainstreamed in lots of parts of the world. And that approach does work in some geographical regions, but we also spoke with local governments from various countries who said we have an entire archive full of plans. They're collecting dust. We have plans for resilience, we have plans for risk, but no one's implementing them. And one of the kind of criticisms of organizations like UN Habitat was that so much effort was put into developing these plans, And then the project folder was closed, everyone went home, and nothing seemed to happen from there. So these are some of the elements that we took when we were thinking about our approach and our tool and how we could make it a little bit different, how we can overcome some of those challenges that the local governments had told us. And finally, before I go into the tool in a bit more detail, obviously the international context has changed. We have global targets, we have frameworks, and I think everyone in the room will agree that local governments play an essential role in achieving those. But while the mandate of local governments may have increased, the resources often haven't. Local governments are overstretched when it comes to human resources. So we had to find a way to integrate the goals and targets in these frameworks into our resilience work so that we were not creating more work for the local governments. And in this, I think the kind of technical experts, the partner organizations that we work with who have helped us to develop this approach have done a really great job. Let me move on now just to explain a little bit about the tool itself and how it works. So it really asks some 4 simple questions. The first one is why. So what are the main risks in the city based on local knowledge coming from the local government, coming from different partners in the city, coming from historical data? We try to exploit as much as possible new sources of data. So we were able to form a partnership with a satellite data provider who can provide data on climate change trends in cities. It's part of a European project. There's no fee associated with it, and it's data that lots of cities in the world would not be able to generate on their own, or they would have to purchase that data. So we were able to gather a lot of data on each of the cities that we're working with on risk. Who? So this is all about stakeholders. Who are the main stakeholders in the city? And again, this means working with the local government. They know their context best. We also tried to move away from working with one department in a municipality to a much broader consensus building process. So the data collection that we did required our focal points in the local government to reach out to other departments to get data on transport or economy or various aspects of the city's functionality. In the case of Maputo, where we were working, a huge percentage of the city is informal. So in order to get accurate information on those neighborhoods in the city, we reached out to Architecture Without Borders. And they were able to facilitate some information, but more ground checking of the information that we had. So they knew the terrain. They could go out and say, okay, the data says this, but actually we know that the situation is slightly different. The importance of stakeholder engagement should also be highlighted because it means that when you get to the action stage of the project, those partners, they've bought into your work. They're invested in your work. They'll be willing to take those actions forward, to champion them among wherever their field of expertise or in their sector. And then we have the what. This is the largest kind of task that we give to the local government when they're implementing this tool. And in the previous session, one of the panelists was talking about data and the availability of data. Now, we ran this tool in Barcelona, and they were able to generate, to gather all of the data that we required for this resilience analysis, I think, in 3 months. But that's Barcelona. When you go to other cities, it takes much longer. Some data is simply not available. So what we've tried to do is adapt and prioritize some of the data that we need so that it's really accessible for all cities. And then finally, the how. I think very often this is where a lot of resilience initiatives go wrong. We map out the plans, the processes, and the initiatives that are happening in the city. We we try and involve the partners that are implementing those projects, but we do a kind of assessment as well. Okay, how are these working? What are the expected results? If we scale them up, will it have an impact on the wider city's resilience challenges? So with these 4 questions, we create what is our profile. I think I have a picture of it here. We have this profile that if you click on different parts, then it shows you the information that's been gathered. And we use this to hold a workshop with as many of the partners that have been involved in the process as possible. And we try to build consensus over what are the priority actions that this city should take. And again, I go back to the question of impact. It's about negative impact on people. So as a group, the members of that resilience board, they counter-check the information that has been put into the profile. Then they decide where to take the action based on this understanding of impact on people. And from there, we also provide some kind of some guidance and structure on how to develop the actions. And what we do is we divide them into 3 different categories. Very often when you talk about resilience, infrastructure comes up, and then when you talk about infrastructure, investment comes up, and then there's no money and things get stuck. So we divide it into 3 different areas. One is direct implementation. Now, these are actions that the local government can implement based on our understanding. So they may not require additional funding, they may require 0 funding, but they're within the mandate of the local government. The second group of actions are agreement. They can be led by the local government, but they will need partnerships, be it the private sector, other actors that are in the city. And then we have advocacy, which are the larger kind of investment projects that will need external funding. They will need some kind of policy change at the national level. In our experience, this has been effective because there's a sense of empowerment at the local level that they can actually do something immediately. They'll see a result. Then they can move on to the partnerships and eventually the advocacy. So I think I'm running out of time. I just want to give everyone an overview. This is how our process works. It takes between 1 and 2 years, depending on the city and the availability of human resources, mostly. And I think that's it. You can find out more here. And yeah, any questions?
Craig, thanks very much. I know that we have a serious time constraint. I don't want us to be thrown out of this room. But before proceeding, I would like to present 2 more panelists. We have amongst us Dr. Najat Zarrouk. She is the director of the African Local Government Academy in Morocco, based in Morocco. Well, it covers the Africa-wide, and I will leave it to her to introduce herself a bit further later on. We also have the pleasure to welcome the executive mayor, Mr. Massina, of the city of Nkourou-Leni. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it properly. Well, welcome, Mr. Mayor. So I would suggest that we keep the presentation maybe not more than 10 minutes because we want to hear from you. You're here to voice out your concerns or make suggestions. So that's how I would suggest that we move further. So, Mr. Mayor, let me invite you just to indeed share a bit of your experience regarding resilience of your city in few words, and maybe that could trigger trigger people from thinking and asking questions later on.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the session. My name is Mzwandile Massina, Executive Mayor of the city of Nkourou-Leni in Gauteng province. Look, in our city we have a major problem which has presented an opportunity for us to look into the systems of governance and ensure that we can test some of the measures of resilience. The city is almost 70% dolomitic, so every infrastructure that we seek to deploy, we need extra measures to be able to build, be it hospitals, schools, clinics, and things like those. So we really have almost sharpened the engineering skills, and we've been able over time to tap into some of the best amongst in the country to try and ensure that we can use the best with what we have. We have a limited pieces of land to deploy public infrastructure, yet there is a massive urban sprawl in our communities, especially there is almost 119 informal settlements that are just mushrooming from different areas because people are looking for houses. So we really, as government, are working very hard, and as you know, that the citizens, when they see a vacant piece of land, they want to put a shack and they want to build. They want to see a clinic. They want to see the school. In our case, we have to do extraordinary work to try and ensure that, firstly, you prepare that particular land, but also you ensure that the type of engineering that is deployed there is such that it can meet the engineering standard that are set out there. So we've seen some of the most interesting cases, which in my view, I think could be lessons that can be drawn by cities that are experiencing dolomitic conditions. We are now able to build up to 10-story walk-up for RDPs, which is like a low-cost housing in our area, using that kind of technologies that we have acquired over time. And for me, it is quite encouraging, and I'm saying that we really have to now look into the second phase on how do we ensure that we take advantage of some of the dilapidated buildings in town, so that we can try and ensure that we build on the human settlement aspect, because we have quite a number of challenges around the human settlement in our space. So in the main, that's the issue around the infrastructure build program and the quality and the type that is required on the ground that we have experienced. And we've really are beginning to see that there is a lot of investment. And I must just perhaps add that that kind of development requires massive investment at the planning phase. As you know, that we've got limited budgets in terms of how we get to do our work. So we spend more money in planning, in engineering, even before we could construct some of the critical infrastructure that is required to be deployed for communities. I must say that it's quite difficult, but we are making headway, and we believe that there could be some international lessons that could be drawn from our city in terms of how we have approached, because otherwise, cities like Japan and them, if they can reclaim the land and build massive infrastructure, we've got the land, but it's dolomitic. So we have had to readapt and ensure that we make the best out of the pieces of land that we have for all the building of all social amenities in our space. So I think that's an experience we'd like to share with the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. That was very precise, and thanks for keeping control over the time. So before proceeding, because I truly want to hear from you people present here, with regards to the intervention of Honorable Fatimatu, Mr. Craig, and Mr. the Mayor, do you have any questions or comments in one line, briefly, from the audience? Okay. So are you still here? I just want to ensure that you're here. Hello, everyone? You're here. So let's proceed. So there's one thing that was mentioned in the first presentation and the video. We are speaking basically about people. So if we are addressing resilience, we are speaking about how we put people at the center of a development process and how we behave with regards to any kind of development process. And one word was used by Craig, it's about shocks. How do we behave when we have to endure shocks? Maybe some of you have witnessed the serious cyclones that have been striking the east coast of, or the southeast coast of Africa in Malawi. I come from an island, Mauritius, and we suffer from cyclones, tropical cyclones, every year during 3 months. So we always need to be ready to face cyclones. And we do have a way to cope with it in a resilient way, maybe, or maybe not. It's another topic. But I would like to now invite Dr. René. Within those lines, when we speak about people at the center of development or resilience of our city, could you please elaborate on what you actually do and how we approach that question of resilience, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vinesh, for that kind of introduction. My name is René Peter Hohmann. I'm the head of global programs of the Cities Alliance Secretariat. The Cities Alliance is a global partnership not of cities, but for cities, and in which UCLG is one of our key members. And I think it's time also to thank UCLG World Secretariat to bring us all together. So already kudos to the World Secretariat, but also very thankful for the city of Durban as a host. With that, also the question on resilience. I think my hypothesis would be when we talk about Africa and the resilient and sustainable future of cities, I would argue that it's not necessarily how well small and medium-sized cities are prepared against future shocks. The biggest risk that we are facing in Africa in particular, and also in our work, is that we don't get urbanization right. The current urban transition processes will shape how future generations will work, will consume, will live in the cities. And this is a short window of opportunity, and if this is not taken, the future shocks will be increasingly more severe and will be more intense. And let me give you a little bit of how we would think a city across Africa could be strengthened against the following tendencies that we see. So we know that by 2040 we have 60% of across the population in Africa will live in cities. We have the youth will be the largest workforce. So current estimates is around 1.1 billion youth that are on the labor market. At this point in time, we have already 60% of people living in informal settlements, and 61% of the urban employment is in the informal economy, and this is the sector that will grow up to 90%. So again, I would argue that better addressing the resiliency and sustainability of the urban transition in Africa is not only to adhere to global agendas and goals that we all agreed upon, it's actually to rethink how we provide services, how infrastructure is being built, in particular resilient infrastructure, how voices of the community are heard and created in cities. The Cities Alliance works across Africa, in particular with national governments, local government associations, and particular secondary cities. And in that debate on how to strengthen the resiliency in cities, we've identified more or less 3 types of access and elements that most of our mayors are complaining about. The first one is the access to data. And we all know, as we've heard, that if you look in the majority of cities across Africa, you don't have the data. You don't have the household data. You don't know about the land use planning. You don't land uses. You don't have actually population surveys. But we would argue, and we would find that the mixture, what local governments can do already, is between the availability of global data and community-generated data. And this is something that I always surprised that when it comes to global data, there are platforms provided currently by the European Commission. One is the Global Human Settlements Layer or the Copernicus program that allows you to track your city within a 3-month update, where it grows, how many houses you can count, you can see in which entrenchment areas, you can see river flows, But the key issue is that no one is using this data because it's GIS data. Most of the cities in which we work don't have a, let's say, physical geographer, an urban planner that actually can access this free and currently updated data. So this is something that should be used, can be used, but of course the access to it is still constrained. So if we have the global data and we know that the local household data is not, I would like to refer to some of the experiences that we supported between United Cities and Local Governments of Africa and SHEC and Slum Dwellers International on slum enumeration schemes. So these partnerships that are created at the city level to go into informal settlements, to do surveys, household surveys, surveys about the use of resources, about service gaps. This is data that can complement the global data, but it's even more. It creates a mechanism for the cities to work on community adaptation measures in these informal settlements, which will be, of course, hit hardest, and this is the capital in form of numbers and initiatives that one can generate. So it is actually the use of global and community-generated data. The second axis that we see can be enhanced, and I think there are many opportunities to discuss, especially here, especially with National Local Government Association, is the access to networks. We would argue that the fate of many cities to become resilient and prosperous is more and more determined by its integration within a national system of cities. So it is to understand the trade, migration, the public service provision, but at the regional level, from rural to urban, from the cities, from the hinterland, the trade patterns, from small to medium-sized cities, from corridor of cities to metropolitan regions. So this is something that needs to be taken up at the regional level that not one city alone can do, and we, I think that local government associations and particular training institutions at the national and regional level that can assist. The third axis, I think, is the access to finance. We've already talked about it. In particular, I assume the question will come up, how can cities access the climate funding that is currently available from the global level? I have to say, when we monitored the devolution of those global funds during the last, let's say, 5 to 10 years, it has become pretty clear that all those global funds, be it the Green Climate Fund or the Global Adaptation Fund, is focusing on national governments. So this is the uptake at the national level, which requires strong intermediaries such as national and local government associations to partner up, to create that pressure, but also access, to enable them to access these vertical partnerships that we talk about. But this is where also the future access to funding for resilience strategies lies. So, Mr. Moderator, let me just finalize by 5 key takeaway messages that we think is the key to think about the resilient and sustainable cities in Africa. So the first takeaway message would be we need to better understand the flow of goods, services, resources and people within a system of cities, and this needs to be done at the national level. So it's not the global, it needs to really think through the national level how the cities are connected to each other. We need to require a national enabling environment to balance growth, but please also the priorities. The priorities is not in those cities that grow the most. This is not in the small and medium-sized cities. We still think about some of the primacy within the national system of cities, mostly about capitals, and this may need to change. And this, connected to that, the third takeaway message for me is to address the bias on the investment, to growth poles and match projects to secondary city with domestic and international investment vehicles. Again, what are the reasons that investments are not made in secondary cities, and this needs to be addressed at the national level. We think, fourthly, that strengthening local planning and municipal finance system in secondary cities on all cities of all sizes. We just heard in the session before us, we need to have an ecosystem that better understands the municipal transactions from the national to the local level, but also how public investments can be made in cities of all sizes. And finally, and that I would like to close, I think what is really at my heart, and I think that is something that can generate in congregations such as these, is local governments and cities need to plan beyond their municipal boundaries. So especially for hard and soft connective infrastructure that need to be created, connecting cities, connecting people, but also finding financing solutions for shared infrastructure, resilient infrastructure in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. René. A question to the audience before we proceed with the next speaker. How many amongst you are mayors here? Could you raise your hands? Combien parmi vous sont des maires? N'hésitez pas, hein, il faut bien lever les mains. OK. Donc, combien parmi vous, dans vos mairies...
Thank you. Well, allow me just to swap between English and French. Which of you have architects, geographers, or urban specialists in your teams on the local governments? There is interpretation.
Or geographers, yeah, geographers, yeah. All right. So you see, basically it's less than 10%. But these technicians are key. We are talking about space, we are talking about people, we are talking about collecting data. Without data, we do absolutely nothing. That's what was highlighted by the tool presented by Craig. If you were able to follow the presentation, unfortunately, I had to push a bit because of the time constraint. And that's what also is being highlighted by Dr. René. Basically, we need to gather information. We need to understand what is happening. So I don't want to elaborate on that specific point right now, but later on I might add my own opinion and experience. I would like to invite Dr. Najat to proceed with her presentation. And I truly want you people to ask questions. That's fundamental, because we will understand if at least you're able to follow what we want to transmit as information and how we can create that synergy to collaborate, like was rightly mentioned by Dr. René. So, Dr. Najat, please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Dear Madam Chair, dear colleagues. I have the honor to share with you a good practice coming from the Kingdom of Morocco, but for an African vision, through what is the African Local Government Academy is doing to leave no one, no place behind in implementing and localizing global and African agenda at African local level. So the main challenge facing the implementation and localizing of global and African agenda, and when we talk about global and African agenda, it's a lot of commitments. The empowerment of human capital at the African local level. For me, this is the main challenge for the local authorities, for the decentralization process, for the local governance, and for local development, and for resilient cities. The key priorities and wave of action of UCLG-Africa, which I am representing, and which headquarters is based in Rabat, the city of Rabat. And I'm very glad that the mayor of Rabat is with us here, Mr. Sadiqi. Thank you for being here with other mayors from our country. So you can see that it's really a patchwork of a lot of priorities, issues facing decentralization in Africa, in our continent. It's empowering youth, empowering women, knowledge sharing, data collecting and information, climate change, local good governance, peer review, resource mobilization, etc. So what is ALGA? At the origin, it was an initiative adopted and presented by my country, the Kingdom of Morocco, but for an African vision, and it was adopted by the ministers and the local authorities in Marrakesh in 2009 during our flagship events, AfriCities. So the institutional setting of this academy so far, we are working with the states, with the governments, with the national association. We have so far 48 national associations covering the 5th region of Africa, including this SADC region where we are. We are now relying on 30 African Anchoring Institute and 28 partners worldwide, including MILE in Durban. We work with the community of experts, and we make a focus on the African expertise, because we do believe that Africa, there is not only gold and mines, there is a human capital skilled with competencies and with expertise that deserve to be respected, involved, and mobilized. We work also with the private sector, with the donors, with godfathers and godmothers, and also with the territorial managers and the professional networks. 4 pillars of action, of course. We're supposed to empower and support our members and our networks. We have a lot of networks: city managers, traditional authorities, financial directors, technical directors, the REFELA, presented here by REFELA Morocco, Madame Fatna. She's a very role model in our country also. We enhance human resource management at local level because it seems that we want to redress all the problems at local level just by training and capacity building. No, no way. We need to build a very strong local public administration in our communities and our localities. And also we work to design a very innovative training offer, very blended, online and also presential. Our methodology, I don't give limits or boundaries to my ambition because I am believing in my cause to empower African human capital at grassroots. So we are organizing our flagship events. It's an annual forum, seminars, conferences, side events, online courses. We allow our members and networks to access to information and documentation. We organize institutional and cultural visits. We organize peer learning. And also we develop training tools and kits. So, ALGA Harvest, and I'm very proud since 2009 until now, you can see we have done 3 feasibility studies. We have this network in Africa and also at global level. We have our training offer, we have our flagship events, and we have 2 main donors, is the Kingdom of Morocco and also the European Commission, beside other partners and donors. Our several challenges to deal with, first of all, is the resource mobilization. We cannot empower the human capital without a minimum, a budget that is allocated both by the government and the local authorities and also the donors and international organizations. We need to believe in our cause. It is not easy. People take training and capacity building and empowering like pedagogical tourism. We need to finish with this way of doing and change mindset. Training capacity building is for a goal. It is to better do public service delivery and also to better serve those who elected or appointed the officials. We need to put more integration, more coherence, and more convergence in all those who are and the players who are involved in this field to gain trust and to deliver and to have an impact. The lessons learned, we are still very far from our ambition regarding all the challenge facing decentralization, local governance, and local development. We need to organize more and more activities, including on resilience cities. We need to invest in win-win partnerships, and we can realize when we have win-win partnership, we can realize a lot with less means. And it becomes crucial and urgent for governments and local authorities and also for international organizations and donors to advocate for human capital as it is done with the candidacy of Mr. Boudra. You can see he put this priority as a second priority in his vision, and I would like to wish him really a good luck. Some pictures, and I will finish, Madam Chair. This is our gathering from which we leave no one behind. We invite all the actors and stakeholders involved in decentralization annually to celebrate the human capital at the local level. Recently, it was in Ifran, in Morocco, and we have organized one in Saidia in the north of Morocco and another one in Saleh near the capital city of Rabat. And this can allow the participants to see that decentralization, when you have good leaders, when you have the competencies, when you have the resources, you can realize decentralization and make it a reality for citizens and for communities. We certificate training, and I invite all of you to come to the city of Nador or Oujda, where we will deliver in few days certificates to the third cohort of territorial coaching. We organize training of trainers. So far, we can rely on 70 trainers in Africa on localizing SDGs, but also on culture and heritage. We organize side events. We organize study tours, both for elected officials, and we have here a representative from Libya who honored us with his presence recently for a study tour to learn from the experience of Morocco and to share his challenges and best practices. These study tours also focus benefit to students. We welcomed each year students from university, from Florida International University. To conclude, we co-organize and facilitate events. In next week, in 19, the city of Rabat will host the human resource managers in the public administration in Africa. They will have their conference with us in Rabat. We organize field visits to give visibility to our members and networks, because even they are facing challenges, they are doing well, and they try with the limited resources, with all the challenges, they are trying to doing well. Here it was in city of Tema in Ghana, and also in Naron district from Yaoundé. We invest in information and communication tools. We have 2 MOOCs on Coursera due to the support of our partner in Netherlands. It's represented here, AHS. And also we are planning to have more MOOCs with the learning department of UCLG and with the French Agency of Development. We promote African culture heritage. Africa is the cradle of the humanity. So each activity organized by the Academy will put the visit to the culture, the monuments and the sites, and the cultural foods also, and clothes, and all what is linked to culture. We promote and impact local economic development, because someone in the first session has talked about local economic development. Through our activities, we mobilize international and internal transport, hotels, restaurants, catering, consultants and experts, bookstores, printing houses, small and medium enterprises. ALGA, finally, is a globally engaged academy. We are among a task force working to design modules, and those who want to benefit from them, they are already in English, and you can benefit from this module on how to implement SDGs in the public institution. And recently, in July, ALGA was elected in this board of management of the International Association of Schools and the Institute of Administration, ASIA, for 2019-2022. The partners who trust ALGA so far, you can see it's very diverse, and it's a matter of hard work and to believe in your cause and to believe that Africa deserves to be served in an excellent way. So for more information, please do not hesitate to visit our portal and also the website of this academy. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Dr. Najat, thanks for this 10 years of efforts, and we know that those efforts are paying off now. One question to the audience, because you are not asking us questions, so I'll turn it to you now. If we just look at the African continent, we all know the current population is approximately 1.2 billion. And it is said that this population over the 3 decades is going to double. And half of that population will live in cities. If we put it in a nutshell, we need shelter, we did not address that issue of shelter. But can anyone in the audience tell us if you have an idea of how many housing units we need to build to shelter the 1.2 billion Africans to come? Anyone in the audience? Oh, maybe it is too mathematical as a question. Well, let me help you. It is minimum 50,000 housing units per day. Au moins 50,000 unités d'habitation ou de logement par jour. My second question, does anyone here can say how to build those housing units? In one day, we built 50,000 houses and we deliver it for people to live in over the next 30 years to come. This is the African reality today. And if we do not consider a resilient approach as well as a sustainable approach to development, it can become really crazy. This is about construction. There are issues regarding food self-sufficiency, agriculture, etc. But these are just food for thoughts, okay? I would like to remain within the urban context. Another question, how many amongst you use your private transport to go to work or your car? Can you raise your hands, please? Please, let's play the game. You are too shy, huh? That's all, okay? So how many use a bike or walk? One. Okay, I see mostly European countries. You gentlemen also, maybe? Okay. How many use a public transport system? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, approximately, okay, 10. So don't you think there is a challenge here? Most use the private transport, some the public transport, others uses a bike also. I would like that we address the challenge of transportation, for instance, what's happening in South Africa, more specifically in Durban. And I have the pleasure to invite architect Ntembu to give an insight about how transportation challenge is being tackled in the heart of the city, and where are we going in terms of building resilient cities. So, architect Ntembu, please. The mic is there. It's with you, no? Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chairperson. My name is Kumuzo Ntembu. I'm an architect here in Durban. Deputy President for Institute of Architects provincially, and also sit at the Africa Union of Architects. The challenge about transportation, I see it relate a lot with goal number 9 for infrastructure and goal number 11 of the UN development goals. Because if you have to talk about sustainable cities in a rapid urbanization environment, you still have to move, you still have to work so that the city can work. As people, we have moved a lot from how we used to do things. Our lives have complicated, and therefore our carbon footprint has gone up. Before, you would actually go to the forests and have firewood, you'd go to the river, and you actually would not be using any car, any vehicle. But because our lives have changed, we're urbanizing and all of that, we now have to find innovative ways that could be as environmentally friendly as we were before this time. If you look at architecture and vernacular architecture, even in our context, look at a hut. It is very biodegradable, that the mud goes back to the soil, the sticks rot and the ants take away the grass, and all of what you have is gone straight back to the ground. And that's green architecture at its best, which is one of the things that we deal with Africa Union of Architects. We don't look only at Green Star rating. We look at ancient methods that speak green, that speak sustainability. We look at things like the mud wall. We look at things like the thermal mass of the stone walls in Mapungubwe in Great Zimbabwe. And that is actually, we look at that as good examples of architecture. So I'm talking transportation, but I'll always end up in buildings. I'm an architect. So the current trend within our continent, you can. There's still a lot of people who work in the cities, but there comes a time where, if you look at the picture I have there, where you have a mother and you have a few things to carry, then walking is not going to work for you. And there's a lot of bicycles on the continent, about 10 million bikes, and also we have a number of borders, motorcycles. Air travel is ever increasing as well. So while we have made the fuel consumption to be more efficient than a few decades back, we have doubled the number of aircraft, so we're almost right back where we were. One of the things I'm going to speak more about is rail. Lots of projects happening on the continent with rail. This one in East Africa, Nigeria. This is an example in South Africa. This transportation system is not necessarily for the daily commuting of the regular passenger. It's more business orientated because of the pricing. $23 a trip return from Sandton to our Tambo, which is 390 South African rands. But it's still more convenient than the Uber, which could still get you stuck in traffic, which is $43 US dollars. What that train does for you, it takes you from OR Tambo to all the major centers in Johannesburg, Sandton, Rosebank, Pretoria, and the city center through Park Station. So rail benefits. Benefits of rail is that obviously you have a different cost, you have a different route completely to the car. So you avoid all the anticipated congestion that you'd have if you were in a car. The main thing is that stations themselves must be designed in such a way that they are more efficient. You can always get more trains, you can always get more railway tracks, but it is in the moving of people during peak times. And peak times is in the morning and the afternoon, people going to work, and when I come back from work, that's 60% of people moving. So if you can create a more efficient system right where people come in through the centers, buy tickets and so on and so forth, you can actually create an overall more efficient system. So my finger is on rail because it is one of the solutions in a situation where we are urbanizing rapidly. We are not, the executive mayor was speaking about informal settlements. We are not going to be able to stop the growth of informal settlements. People are coming into the city for better opportunities, better facilities, etc. We then have to find ways that can deal with a number of people at the same time, which is, say, if we look at rail now, then we have to think about how we modernize, how we make it more attractive. How it helps, for example, in traffic congestion is that if you have one train that takes about 260 passengers, you've eliminated 60 minibus taxis or 130 cars with 2 people each on average, because South Africans drive, you either drive alone or you drive just the 2 of you. People don't really carpool. Looking at other examples in South Africa, the bus rapid transport system, which is also being implemented in countries such as Ethiopia and Tanzania. In South Africa, we've done Cape Town, which is my city. We've done Rea Vaya, Joburg, and the one in Pretoria. The Durban is working on Go, but it's still being worked on. BRT system as well, dedicated lanes, which is better traffic maneuver, more predictable times, affordable state-of-the-art transport, special needs facilities, Wi-Fi at stations, and smartphone app. This is how then it compares to other modes of transport, BRT. 750 rands for about 5 kilometers. That's like 50 cents if you take it to US dollars. And a minibus taxi for the same distance is about 7 rands. So even though you have added that much infrastructure, you're still getting value for your money, because the difference between a minibus taxi and the BRT, this example is specifically for the Joburg one, Rea Vaya, is only 50 cents. Uber is much more than that, and the train obviously coming in the cheapest. That's the split of the transportation in South Africa. Minibus taxis mostly. The car is 14%, bus 10%, rail is underused. Okay, I think I lost a picture there. There's a picture of old tram, an old tram that is in Durban, horse-drawn. Okay, Durban today. So when we are talking about the different modes of transport, given the fact that we actually have a rate of people living under the poverty line of about 40%, you have to make sure that you cater for everyone in the city. This is at Warwick Junction, which is at the market, and this is a flyover bridge where people can walk. And with that comes the opportunity to have commerce, obviously. People can sell and everything. So where somebody cannot afford even a ticket for a train, even a ticket for a bus or whatever, in an African city, you must have walkways that become meeting places, that become marketplaces. So that's very important. Durban today, those are the new initiatives that have happened. There's an interchange in Mhlanga, that's Bridge City, which we were involved in. If you look at the comparison between the road and rail, it's almost the same prices for what you're getting. A road interchange and a railway link. That was a completely railway link that goes to a new station in Bridge City. And so we actually just need to start prioritizing better. So BRT system is coming for Durban, which is 22 billion over 13 years. That's the station. When we talk about modernization, we're working with the Passenger Rails Agency of South Africa, PRASA, to change the image of rail in South Africa. This is a project we did in the Congo Brazzaville, where we're looking at existing stations. This was a proposal, and how we can make them more efficient. So by adding more platforms, go back to what I was saying earlier, that it is not just about the route itself, it is about how you move passengers in the actual station. So if you have to build a new platform, then obviously you have to have a bridge over, and you can have an overhead station. This is an example, and that was our architectural solution, which you leave the heritage building as it is, and you just lightly touch it with a glass bridge, and then a contemporary solution on the other end. That's it.
Thank you very much, Architect Ntumbo. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to please give a big round of applause to our panelists. So, please. And applause to you for your patience. I think you must be attending some other work sessions, but let's take 5 minutes, not more, to hear, at least from few of you, any comments, any critic. It is important for us as feedback. So I see a nice lady smiling towards maybe the panelists or me. So a question about your city and what are you doing in your city when it comes to public transportation? You need the mic. Can someone facilitate the mic, please? Here in front. Could you please? No? Right, it didn't work. I need to finish. Well, I've got the red card that I need to finish. So before finishing, just a concluding note. Dr. Zarouk mentioned a lot about investing in human capital. It was also in the previous session. So currently, we are coming forward with a proposal for to designing a training offer on how to shape resilient cities in Africa. Basically, we are programming. Well, this is a recommendation that we are making to this World Summit or World Congress for cities and local government to devise the right tools to provide trainings, internship for students and young professionals to work with you, to work closely with you. And so this is a partnership between UCLG-Africa and the Africa Union of Architects. And very soon you will hear more about this recommendation that's coming forward. And without delaying any further, once again, thank you for your patience, attention, and I truly hope that whatever has been shared by the panelists, the message has been conveyed to you. Thanks, and see you soon again. Thank you.